What's up, everybody? What's up, MGTOW? So this video is going to be on the overuse of behavioralist economic logic. Now, in a lot of senses, behaviorism or behaviorist logic does make a lot of sense in a lot of context, and especially in a lot of context involving economics. But I think that some people overuse behavioralist logic in certain context, and especially when there's no evidence to back up the logic that they're using. Now, behavioralists kind of go by a lot of axiomatic phrases and sayings about human behavior, and one thing we know about human behavior is that it doesn't always follow the most logical course. And so using logic to create theories and come to some conclusions is good, but if there's evidence to the contrary, then we should also include that evidence. For example, back in the 1300s, it would have been much more logical, or using Occam's razor probably, to think that there was just a downward force holding everybody down onto the planet because, the theory of gravity and trying to explain to people that space isn't really empty and it's more like a fabric and all this other stuff. It's not exactly the most straightforward, simple, logical explanation that you could give to why your feet stay on the ground. And there's just a basic premise that everything in the universe cannot be explained through economics. Because, for example, you can't explain why rocks exist through economic theory. You just can't. So therefore, everything in the universe cannot be explained through economics. So, for example, one axiom that behavioralists often cite is that when it comes to the profit motive, that people, if they had enough money to live and have their needs satisfied, then they wouldn't work. But this theory is only true sometimes, so you have to use a qualifier. So it's not really a good axiom or a good universal statement, because if you say, oh, well, if people have their needs met, then they won't work, that's a lot different than saying some people won't work, or some people in certain conditions won't work. It's not a universal statement. And so therefore, it's not an actual premise to an argument because it requires a qualifier. And basically, it's disproven by the fact that there are rich people that work. Like, for example, Jeff Bezos. Like, if the theory or the axiom that people won't work when they have enough money to live is true, then Jeff Bezos shouldn't be working. And therefore, somebody like Jeff Bezos disproves the idea that if you have your basic needs met and you don't need money anymore, then you will no longer work. It's just not a true statement. So the main point I wanted to get to in this video is this sort of Stefan Molyneux-esque argument about success and hiring and basically how people rise up through the ranks of the social hierarchy. Now, according to Stefan Molyneux' theory, and I'm not specifically picking on Stefan, but he does seem to typify this type of an argument, and I've heard him say this type of argument several times, is that basically if you don't have a good job, it's because you're not good, you're not competent. And his theory is basically an economic behavioralist theory that if you were good, then a company would hire you because a company wants to make money. And so therefore, if you were good, then they would hire you because they want to make money. And so therefore, the reason why they didn't hire you is because you're not good. And so therefore, you're low IQ or whatever. That's usually how his argument goes. I'm kind of paraphrasing it there, but that's the general premise of his argument. So about a week ago, I was watching this Undead Chronic video where he was roasting this chick that was talking about how attractive women have it tougher in life or something like that. And it was kind of interesting because she wasn't really that attractive in the first place. And one of the facts that she brought up was that apparently attractive men are less likely to be hired in certain types of jobs. And so I looked up that information, and it is true in a sense, but only in certain contexts. So this one article is titled, Not Getting Hired? Study says maybe you're just too darned attractive. And the article is written by Workopolis. I'll post a link. So this article is based on research that was done by the University of London College School of Management, the University of Maryland, London Business School, and INSEAD. And their research found that handsome men are preferred for roles that require cooperation, but not so much for competitive jobs. And since we know that it's a very competitive job market, this would affect a lot of people. The lead researcher, Sun Young Lee, and his co-authors found, quote, handsome men are seen as more competent, so managers in collaborative workplaces such as R&D departments hire good-looking male candidates over less good-looking ones. However, in competitive workplaces such as sales departments, good looks signaling competence can make handsome men seem threatening to future colleagues. If decision makers expect to compete, they would rather discriminate against them. So yeah, you can check out that article, and there's several other articles written on the same study. And what I really want to focus here on is not so much this concept of attractive men being less likely to be hired, but this research flies in the face of Stefan Molyneux-esque type of behaviorist theories that if you are good or seem competent, then the company will hire you because the company wants to make money. Because this is actually showing that having competency or appearing even competent can be a negative against you when it comes to hiring practices. And that basically completely disproves Stefan Molyneux's behavioralist theory that the most competent or competent seeming person is going to be the most likely to get hired because the company wants to make money. Because right here you have two competing, I guess you could say, instincts. The profit motive instinct and the I want to keep my job instinct. And the I want to keep my job instinct kind of hits closer to home when it comes to the survival of yourself. So therefore, if you think that someone is going to be competitive with you and possibly take your position, you're going to be less likely to hire them, not more likely to hire them. So it goes completely against his theory that, oh, they want to make money, so they're going to hire the best person for the job, because it's clearly not true by this study. And now, so if you take this concept and kind of expand it into more of a macro type of system, you can kind of see why a strict economic behavioralist like somebody like Stefan Molyneux can't really understand how conspiracies work or how the bigger overarching conspiracy works. Because if you're somebody like Stefan and you believe that all actions are taken for profit, gain, or self-interest, it would be very hard for you to kind of understand how an intergenerational plot that involves individuals sacrificing themselves for a goal that they will never see the rewards of. Because, as you can see, there is a point in which the profit motive is outbid, so to speak, by the survival motive. So, like, these hiring managers are less likely to actually hire somebody that's competent than to make money. So there is things that actually overpower the self-interest profit motive. And then again, like the behavioralist economist can't understand why the government would purposefully want to support welfare and get rid of the middle class, because it's basically the same concept. If you're an upper class person, you're mostly competitive with the middle class. So if you can get rid of the middle class and only have a dumbed down lower class of people that are on welfare and dependent on the upper class, that's more beneficial to you than actually having a upwardly mobile middle class, because they're your direct competition. So even though, a rising tide lifts all boats, if you want to be the only boat in the ocean, then you don't want the tide to rise. You want everybody else's boat to sink. And the only other people that are around are in dinghies and you're in a yacht. Because that's real human behavior. People would rather, be on the top of a pile of shit than be, the third man down on top of a mountain. Now, I think where behavioralist economists could kind of understand this concept is the fact of, when your goal crosses over from wealth acquisition to power acquisition, because this is kind of the same type of concept. Like when you have Jeff Bezos money, you're not really so much focused on how much cash you can get and how much assets you can collect. It's more about maintaining your system of control and power over whatever market share that you have. And that's why you see all the collusion and stuff like that within those high-ranking corporations, because they're not operating on the profit motive. They're operating on the power motive. And as we can see from this study, that it goes down from the micro level where you have managers, hiring managers that don't want to hire people that are competent or appear competent, because that threatens their position in the hierarchy. And then you can see how that moves up through society, where politicians and people that are in powerful positions don't want upwardly mobile citizens, because that threatens their position of power. And so therefore, trying to apply this broad economic theory that, well, if you were good, they would hire you because they want to make money, is a really reductionist and simplified idea that doesn't pan out in the real world. So yeah, that's really all I had to say about this. I'll post links for the articles down below so you can check them out yourself. Other than that, have a good day and go MGTOW.